So, in the best of three semi-final here from ESL Open Cup Europe, like I say, 179, I believe. You have Clem in the top left, ShoWTimE in the bottom right. We get into game number one, just like that. And we see what these two are going to bring to the table as we get this underway. Pylon goes down to the side, Depot coming up. And a couple of SCVs just producing through for a moment. We'll get a Depot at the front as well, so bringing that into play. SCV coming over, heading down to the bottom right-hand side. And just seeing where we're going to go with this over the next few moments in general as we make our way through. Obviously just going to be having an SCV heading down early from Clem to get a little bit of scouting information here in this TvP matchup. Clem has been looking freaking good lately, and ShoWTimE has also been pretty good as well. I mean, obviously ShoWTimE, I think, is always capable of beating someone like Clem. Like, Clem can look very, very good, but ShoWTimE always has these matches where he's like, man, I'm absolutely capable of taking on players like Clem, and oftentimes can make these very competitive series. You know, if ShoWTimE beats Clem, I think it's very rarely a shock. If ShoWTimE was to win like 5 times in a row against Clem, then yeah, maybe, but it's just ShoWTimE can't ever seemingly string, you know, sets of results together to have deeper tournament runs. It's going to be seeing a probe heading over that left-hand side. Just for a moment or two here. I'm just going to be seeing a Marine coming out of this barracks early, so we're going to bypass the Reaper, even though obviously this has been a setup with no... Yeah, we're going to bypass the... What am I talking about? We're going to bypass the Reaper, and we're also going to have no expansion just yet, so the factory comes in pretty quickly. So it's been kind of an interesting combination of things in that regard. As our Marine just patrols on the ramp. And our CC will go down on the low ground. So again, that man sent onto the low ground, get that set up for a couple of moments, and we do just have our factory waiting to hop onto the reactor now, so looking to get that going. And again, just a couple of moments here. A probe heading back down to the bottom right side. Well, Hellions coming out, Command Center still coming into play, Stargate is coming out as well, as our Adept continue to shade around here, there, and everywhere. Probe chrono boosting out of this Nexus, and our Warp Gate is still getting set up. Factory lifts off, gonna go and drop down to the tech lab in just a couple of moments as well. It's just gonna get that going. And that is kind of where we stand here. The start of this game number one. An Adept coming through, the Warp Gate coming up. All of this just getting settled. A couple of Hellions would like to poke around at the front, but the Adepts are there to kind of say, nah, don't think you guys are going to get that opportunity just yet. So Clem's not going to be given access, and ShoWTimE just moving his way into that Phoenix play, which is obviously such a given at the moment as well in PvT. This has been how so many players have been playing this. Like I say, that shouldn't really come as too much of a surprise. As a couple of Hellions chill out over on the right-hand side. Cyclone and the Marines continue out as well. Things still overhead, just going to be seeing the Adepts moving through, a couple of Marines still popping out. Get to really kind of see Clem go for kind of the larger push, I suppose, which usually does give us a bit more of a feeling as to how things are going to be panning out here. So yet to see anything of that, just hanging around, chilling out momentarily, and obviously as Stim is on the way, it looks as though the first time we'll see Clem really be super aggressive is probably with that Stim pack, and probably a medevac or two attached to those Marines. Much against Phoenix can obviously be terrifying, you know, bio units in general are a Phoenix's worst nightmare. They can't do too much, the Phoenix, about bio units, right? They can lift up a certain amount to offset numbers a little bit or to help, but like you generally do need a good baseline of other things to be able to make Phoenix work. So, like I say, that's always a little bit of a concern, something you have to stay fairly on top of in general. Gateway in the Robo facility going up at the front. The two Adepts will come over, and the Hellion just going to start taking a bit of damage on that left-hand side as well. So that's going to get knocked down pretty quickly. This other Hellion wants to try and come around too. Again, Robo going to be popping out Immortal shortly. That's the kind of thing that you do want typically when it comes to this sort of moment with the, against the kind of like bio pushes when you're playing Phoenix. The Immortal actually does a lot to kind of add a little bit of tankiness to your force. So it generally does help quite a bit. As our Marines and our Cyclone again continues out down to the south. And our Cyclone locks on. It's going to be seeing our Phoenix taking a bit of damage. Well, with the battery here, we can't overcharge the battery, but I just think it's a bit too much. The Phoenix can lift up a good chunk of this army, right? It can't lift up everything. It needs the supporting units so that the lifts can then still be scary, right? You can't just target down the Phoenix while they go lifting, because the ground units are going to be an issue as well. And I think all things combined here, ShoWTimE looks pretty good for this first game. It's going to be able to hold Clem off for the moment. Then we'll look around, though, try and see what else we can do. Gonna be seeing our health pylons continue in, so just getting all of that set up. And again, +1 attack, combat shield. All going through. So yeah, just bringing these little bits and pieces together. Obviously, Clem just still, again, keeping the idea of aggression up, but he's never really committing too much to anything. He's never going too overboard. Staying pretty chill in that regard, as just see how a couple of additional units warping in. As we get prepped to... I mean, obviously, as Colossi come up, ShoWTimE's going to start feeling very safe in this game, in general. I'm intrigued, man. I'm actually kind of intrigued where we go. Obviously, Phoenix Colossus coming out, Clem keeping good map control. If ShoWTimE can't get up to a 4th base, that could eventually be a problem. Not an issue just yet. A later 4th is kind of fine, especially as Clem's only just finishing his own 3rd CC. Clem's splitting these armies up. He's going to make it difficult for ShoWTimE to split up against him and to have to kind of defend everywhere. So that's going to be part of Clem's plan at the start of this game, as our Marines will actually find a pylon, so just going to start denying some of this vision of ShoWTimE. He has a pretty good ring of vision around his base, trying not to be caught off guard by any of the moves of Clem here in the near future or anything like that, so going to be very cautious in that regard. As again, the bio in the top right pulls back a little bit. Comes over to the left. Observer still chilling out overhead. Phoenix to actually very nearly hit a Widowmine, but they can deny a medevac, so they do get a medevac pick. Right, anytime that these Phoenix are able to do something along those lines, right, that is generally a pretty big net positive. Vikings coming up, Marines on the way, Armory and the Engineering Bay, the Ghost Academy tool coming up. Widowmine going to connect for a little bit of damage as that Colossus continues in. That Widowmine does go down. And just going to be seeing the rest of our bio still coming around that right-hand side, so coming forward. Again, if Clem can kind of jump on a portion of this army that is underprepared, underdefended, I guess we'll see what goes down. Just going to be seeing our Phoenix still overhead. Yeah, if Clem can do that, then I obviously feel pretty okay for him, but otherwise, again, that's the kind of challenge, and if ShoWTimE does this well, which oftentimes he can, then Clem just has to play the later and later game, which, he's very competent in. It's just never easy, especially against someone like as good as ShoWTimE. It's never fun to necessarily play into those later stages of a TvP, so I can understand Clem's, at least interest in kind of staying active on the map and, like, looking for the opportunities, looking for these openings, perhaps, to what's going on as that bio pushes forward. A couple of Vikings going to start firing up. Colossi started to take some pretty hefty damage. Phoenix still up in the skies, as we do have our bio just going to pull back a little bit. A couple of force fields still coming through. Disruptor shot lands for a Widowmine. Bio still in the center, Widowmine still setting up. We do have ourselves the Phoenix actually fly into the Terran Force. 4 Phoenix go down. That's kind of frustrating because they are such a good supporting cast. They're nice to have in this army still. Even if, as time passes by, they may become a little bit less effective. Even to kind of throw out Vikings a little bit, right? Some damage onto those would be nice. Clem does have to deal with these Zealots, though, that dive into his main base, so now we'll have to pull back to deal with that. If he can do that, well, obviously then he's going to unlock the secret to Terran versus Protoss, because that is one of the big things to kind of watch out for. And do you see the Viking coming through? Prism just gets pushed away. Another Disruptor shot trying to land, but doesn't do too much. Bioforce is able to stay out of reach for the moment. Grab a pylon. Just going to be seeing the Vikings still poking. The Prism still taking some shots. Prism going to take a couple shots again. Has to actually recall home, which is nice for Clem, because obviously now he's dealt with that Prism essentially. Now he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. It's actually a major victory. A massive W on the field in that regard. He's got to be very happy with that part of this, as we do see Disruptors, of course, in good numbers. So we're going to have to be very cautious with how we approach the next stages of this game still. We are going to push in to the 6 o'clock position. There is a Nexus getting set up there. Clem is not going to be able to do too much again, just being held off as he splits this army. Trying his absolute utmost to find openings, to find ShoWTimE not splitting correctly, to find the opportunities to really take advantage. He's been doing an okay job of it. Like I say, I wouldn't say he's been able to take a big fight just yet, because ShoWTimE's doing a fantastic job of keeping up with Clem. He's always prepared. He's always got the right split of units. He's not being caught out just yet. Not in a big way, at least. I mean, the biggest mistake he made was honestly running the Phoenix into the bio, and that wasn't necessarily him being out-positioned or anything. That was just a straight-up mistake. Coming through, Ghosts continue to get set. Do have our bio coming in, and just going to be having this Nexus perhaps also will take a little bit of damage here. Colossus going down, Vikings still up in the skies, try and fight against them. Nothing to actually fight these Colossi, the Vikings just yet, and ShoWTimE is bleeding out a lot of supply very quickly. As we are going to be seeing the Bioforce still trying to come through, Zealots, Disruptors, and everything else kind of at bay. Bioforce trying to come forward there. We'll just lift up and back away. Going to lose one medevac though, and Clem taking some losses on the tail end of this. A good start of this fight, a lot lost. 3 Colossi, 2 the Disruptors. There's a lot more Disruptors to go, but obviously getting the Colossi out is one big thing. And now Clem's going to start focusing as well away from some of these Vikings and onto Liberator production, so you can really start to take position on the map. A map like Gresvan has a lot of kind of choked up areas up into bases, so Liberators can be very, very helpful in that regard. This Planetary is not getting killed fast enough by the DTs, as Snipe actually helped a lot, and if with the Liberator coming in position 2, we are going to hold the Planetary. This was multiple DTs going down, expensive for ShoWTimE to lose those harassing units. Those are kind of harassing units that need to either do big eco damage, or, you know, get in, do some damage, and then get out, and obviously they did neither of that there. That was actually very costly. That's the sort of expense that I don't think ShoWTimE can afford, and is the sort of expense that will really put him into a tough position further down the line here. I mean, now Clem's still maxed out. ShoWTimE has to rebuild some of his army that is quite fragile at the moment. Obviously, it's got a lot of boom power, and the fact that any moment a Disruptor can get a lot done. But it does kind of melt a lot of the time, and as Clem comes in from 2 sides, you see these Disruptors beginning to drop, and it looks as though Clem has got a good enough of a jump on this to make his way through a lot of the supply. The Phoenix will do what they can, lifting up a few units, but there's just no follow-up to them. And that's going to be the issue at the end of the day. Not having a follow-up to that means that this Bioforce can continue through, and now it's kind of just gateway units. We've got Reinforced and Disruptors in production, but none of them are here just yet, and so we might be in just big trouble before that happens. A couple more snipes, Zealots going down, the Phoenix taking damage, the Nexus taking some shots as well. This base really is, I think, going to be a goner sooner rather than later. As we kill off the Disruptor, we're going to get through some of these Stalkers. And I think it's fair to say that this is just going to be too much. GG is called, and Clem is going to take game number 1. Played a solid game. Didn't get impatient, right? He was extremely in the top right-hand corner of Ancient Cistern. Will be our Blue Terran play here in this best-of-3 series. It is Clem. Bottom left, Red Protoss is ShoWTimE. We get into our game number 2. Yeah, ShoWTimE obviously playing that Phoenix Colossus style. Honestly, I think not necessarily game losing, because the game didn't end just after anything, but losing the Phoenix definitely made life a bit tougher for ShoWTimE. That was just so unnecessary when every other part of his defense was so freaking good. To kind of give that bit up so easily was such a shame. So yeah, a little bit of a shame in that regard. Probe does come through into the main base again. Just going to go jump into a gas. Nothing too surprising about anything just yet. Super early here. Obviously, Clem did engineering bay block last game. It's a much larger map. Difficult to get the SCV across in time, guaranteed or anything. So I'd be kind of shocked if we saw Clem trying to engineering bay block here on Ancient Sister, and that would be quite a surprise. Nexus, Pylon, both going down. And Clem is just going to get his expansion going straight away. This time goes for the Reaper. Remember last game he bypassed the Reaper for the Marine and Factory straight away, so a little bit of a difference here immediately going into this game number 2. And here's the Reaper coming across the map, which will obviously provide Clem with some pretty decent information early on, a pretty good check of what's up. Now we're going to see ShoWTimE opting for the Stargate opener, so we get to see that straight away and know that that's coming in. And the Reaper just starts to poke its way through that pylon for a couple of moments. So a little bit of damage being dealt. The Adept coming around. Reaper is trying to stay out of the way of the Adept. He's going to run and he's going to get away. The Adept actually gets bopped back for a moment. And here's the Adept again showing up, and this Reaper going to be kept away for just a couple of moments or so. Stargate coming up, the couple probes, the Adept, Warp Gate, all of this is being brought in for the moment. As our Adept is going to be there, Reaper gets pushed back. Oracle on the way from ShoWTimE. Last game he went straight to Phoenix, right? We didn't really see Oracle at all. A little bit of a different approach. Sometimes you see some good value off the Oracle. Sometimes you really don't. Second barracks comes up quickly from Clem. Behind the factory. And he's just going to go Cyclone. Probably just Marines with a stim pack nice and quickly. Would be my guess as to what we go toward. Just to start things out. Gateway goes down. A simulator will begin. The Reaper takes a turn back up the left-hand side. Engineering Bay, Cyclone, Tech Lab, all that coming through. A couple Marines still coming up as well, so all of that being brought in for the moment. As we do just still have our Reaper. Just keeping an eye on things. Really is just kind of, you know, making sure nothing too wild happens. Going to get a little bit of damage onto this probe, for example, and going to grab that kill, so it's going to be a nice little grab. Good to get rid of that. Engineering Bay getting the +1 attack upgrade as well going. It's just going to start out with that one and try and see where we can go to. Oracle actually goes down. Wow. That's obviously nasty. You do not want to really be losing your Oracle early. Needless to say, you know, explain that in detail, but yeah, first Oracle goes down. Just a unit that you want to have throughout this game. Now knocked down early in the game and you just lose some information. Stuff like Stasis Wards and so on, they buy you time, especially now you've got an Oracle, then Phoenix. Stasis Wards, for example, could be the kind of thing that maybe help to defend against some of the initial Terran pushes. Again, you're just going to be that much weaker early on now than what you would have been before this, so just a little something to note as we get this going. You see a couple of Marines, the Marauder, and the Cyclone all joining together. Obviously, Clem can perhaps push with Stim. If he feels as though he's knocked down the Oracle and that's enough to take information away from his opponent and maybe get something done from there, then there's absolutely a little bit of a chance as well. So, again, a couple of things we can maybe keep our eyes on. Stim pack, combat, +1. All of this continues into play. And just seeing our Robo Bay once again from ShoWTimE, which is not really surprising. It's kind of the expectation, right? You go into those Colossi, you get set up into the next stage of this. It's also going to be with Charge. It was only one Phoenix, so this is not going to be off the back of like a lot of Phoenix. Obviously, if you go Phoenix, usually you probably do it off just a single Oracle, because then you can get into the Phoenix quickly. This time around, it doesn't really make sense. It's probably a bit too much of an investment all at once, as we will revelate onto the barracks and the tech lab for just a couple of moments. And this bio army of Clem works its way down to the bottom left side of the map. It's just on a little bit of a journey as one Marine going to come around the left side as well. Also just keeping an eye on what's going on here. Stasis Ward would be amazing to set off because, not that necessarily that it saves the Marine, but just because it's then something you don't walk into later. I think it was pretty close to expiring anyway, perhaps, but yeah, just nice to poke that before a larger force jumps into it instead. Obviously, whether the Marine was about to die or whether it gets away, well, that's a whatever, you know. Now it actually does stay alive as well. And if ShoWTimE doesn't move forward, you can maybe capitalize on it. As you have Oracle coming through and just dropping a little cheeky revelation down, just keeping a little eye on things with that. And just going to be seeing our Bioforce joining up with the Medevac still as our Oracle comes back around the top side. So Oracle's just going to come through and go after a couple of these SCVs already, so some pressure being applied. Get some of that out already, get that going. So we do actually get 3 SCVs. Cyclone locks on again. This Oracle should be able to get... I really thought it was going to get away. Medevac boost will provide the vision. Wow. He just didn't get to dead airspace soon enough, unfortunately. That means the Cyclone is going to get another Oracle kill this game. Not a good day to be an Oracle, is the current way of feeling in the Protoss army. A lot of these guys pretty happy they weren't assigned to be an Oracle in this life. Because, yeah, the Oracles are not having a great time so far with this force of ShoWTimE around the south. So it's Sentries, the Colossus, all gathering together. And as a disruptor off to the side, a few extra bits and pieces of the units continue to come through. And our army begins to go back around the bottom. We're going to see our Phoenix still coming in overhead. Disruptor shot fires, completely misses. That really just absolutely whiffed. As this force field's continued in, just going to be seeing our Zealots are going to take a turn toward the front, so they're going to try and do something counterattacking. Clem's been very good against the counterattacks of the Protoss this series. He's really made sure to not let those get in at all. Like, he's been very on top of it, I would say, even. And that's really nice to see, because it obviously is one of the biggest strengths of a Protoss player is to start pulling the Terran apart when it comes to those, you know, harassments, run-bys, and so on, etc. Those are the things the Terran can have a really bad time with. Same with the Protoss, right? You don't want to let drops go around everywhere. But obviously Protoss run-bys can kind of come out of nowhere sometimes because, you know, one Prism gets in, boom, 10 Zealots warp in, for example. So, yeah, but Clem's doing a great job of just showing that that's not always the strongest thing in the game, and he's doing a pretty good job himself, I would say. Like I say, is just going to have some dodges here, still moving his army around. 1-1 upgrades on the way from ShoWTimE. So he's playing down upgrades at the moment, using some good force fields and spellcasting to keep himself alive. Around the right is going to start having some ghost support as well, so we are going to see that being something else to keep our eyes on here as the battery takes a couple of initial shots. The Colossi in good numbers. I mean, honestly, I feel like we're going to need some more Vikings before we truly fight into this as Clem. I don't think going any sooner is necessarily going to turn out to be that much prettier for him or anything along those lines, so you know, something to think about there as we do see our bio trying to get forward again. Colossus just taking a little bit of damage to start out with once more. Scan again, just providing a little bit of additional vision, just so Clem always knows what he's attacking into, trying to clean out observers and just keeping back any possible vision of the Protoss. As you see another observer of ShoWTimE moving forward there. If Clem can spot that, that would be amazing. He does spot it immediately with the EMP to knock it out of invisibility. So it's still charging through. A couple Marauders get lifted in the sky. The Zealots trying to come down this ramp. As our Phoenix continue to lift as best we can here. It's going to be seeing the bio still chilling. And a little bit of a mine drop actually getting a lot done. Those mine drops can be so frustrating because it almost feels like they show up out of nowhere, right? Like nothing's been going on, then suddenly it's like, boom, Widow mine drop, and that can be so deadly. So 8 probes going down. Clem's still the definitely the aggressor, still the kind of dictator as to how these games are going. You do this, ShoWTimE, you do that, and yeah, ShoWTimE's doing a great job of defending. He's doing a pretty awesome job, honestly, of surviving and kind of drawing this game out further and further, but I think it's fair to say that it's still kind of to, the beat of, the beat that Clem is setting, and that is definitely not super great, because you generally don't want to have the Terran kind of be too heavy on kind of being able to say what happens. It's just very hard to continue keeping up with as the game continues, so... Cyclone locks on still. He's going to get that Zealot. A couple Vikings still overhead. Vikings going to do a great job here. EMP helping to take the shields off the Colossus. It does get a super battery to help it out a little bit, but it's just not enough, Ryan. There's just too much healing to be done, and the Vikings will get through. Now only really Stalkers here. The Disruptor's off over to the side. They're going to have to pull back to the right because there is going to be a Terran force coming here as well. Clem with a nice little punch, and ShoWTimE is going to stumble from it. ShoWTimE's supply in general is actually not recovering very easily either. He's got some money to spend. He will start to warp in some extra bits and pieces, but it's just Stalkers. As Clem lifts up, he will lose not the full medevac. That was unfortunate for ShoWTimE. He targeted the low HP one, which just wasn't the one that was full. That was the empty one. Maybe could have grabbed a full one, which just, again, at this point, you can see that ShoWTimE could obviously do with any little bit of a hand he could take. So, yeah, a little bit of an extra few supply of bio going down would have been nice. Well, Disruptor production, Colossus production continues. So we're going to go back into the Colossi, replacing some of what we lost. Fusion Core still coming through, a couple CCs coming out. Our Bioforce will come in. Sentry going to go down. Adept. Disruptors being picked away at. We do have the Disruptor shots going off, going after a couple of those Marauders. As our Phoenix continue to chase, Medevacs will be shoved away here. And we do have, though, Clem just kind of getting back to some reinforcements. Is immediately going to turn back around on that and just start dealing with it. Honestly, it feels as though Clem maybe had a moment where he could have just joined everything together and just fully sent it. Instead, he continues to play these kind of larger, smaller drops and just kind of smaller clumps of units. Doesn't feel confident in the overall larger fight still. So I kind of feel like maybe he was actually there to the point he could have done that. Hasn't come to fruition. ShoWTimE still taking up to the later stages of this game. The Shadow Stride, right? Going to get those DTs to be even more effective. That is your late game harassment as a Protoss, so that's going to be a pretty big factor too. As the bio just comes around, Vikings spreading out, Clem moving through the middle of the map. Ballistics, our Liberators, our Marauders all still coming through as well. And just going to be seeing this army of ShoWTimE is going to get forwards, blinking to kill 2 medevacs immediately. Of course, Clem has had extremely good economy during all of this. He's obviously had a lot of bases. He's been maxed out. His libs are not getting sieged up easily. Now they're going to siege towards where the Disruptors are coming from, so those Disruptors have to be careful. We lose one. The Vikings get a chance to chase Colossi. Going to kill one very easily. The Stalkers just blinked away, so I think that Colossus might actually die. Disruptors are way too far away from the Bioforce, which is obviously good for Clem. I mean, in a way, that's good for ShoWTimE because it means the Bioforce isn't right on top of you. Coming through again, some of these Zealots. Just continue to drop down, still pushing out down to the south. Back around to the bottom for the moment. Army is ready to go jumping onto the base over here. Just going to jump straight onto this. SCV is going to have to put in some work repairing, so ShoWTimE is at least going to get a base out of this. I mean, that's pretty nice, all things considered, the way that this was going. Obviously, ShoWTimE was maybe not in the prettiest of positions altogether, so it is nice to kind of get that back in the right direction with some damage himself. Clearing out a base of Clem, getting a lot of SCVs is going to keep things competitive. And remember, he's got stuff like the Shadow Stride, the DTs, just to keep on harassing as well. And I do think that continued harass is going to be important the deeper we go in this game, as a couple of Zealots already getting dropped. 10 probes have gone down during this. It's just Liberator harass picking away at a couple different mineral lines. Let's stick with this big Bioforce, though, because any moment the Disruptor shot could be kind of deadly. As Clem tries to find a way in with the Liberators, you expect him to be able to siege up a bit further forward and just keep on pushing those Disruptors back. The Stalkers blink to deal with the Liberator. They've been watching on the minimap for a while. He's just sat there and denying mining time and so on. So try to deal with this as the Vikings deal with the Dark Templar. The DTs may not go down, but they do get pushed back, which is obviously a pretty big victory from Clem again, because anytime DTs are not dealing damage yet they're on the map is obviously pretty awesome. DTs are still going to get into this mineral line, though, so they do finally find a way in. ShoWTimE looks as though he's going to initiate base trade mode, which might just be a good call for him, because obviously I think overall he's been generally behind in this game, so being able to take a step back into this would be awesome. Bioforce still coming through, a couple DTs going down, Pylon getting dropped, Robo Facility being depowered as well. Well, full on base trade mode. One of the big negatives for ShoWTimE going into a base trade is that Clem just had more bases, which means there's just more stuff to knock down from ShoWTimE's point of view, right? So it's kind of a pretty big deal as our Stalkers blink up, SCVs are being chased, a few of those continuing down. Bio coming up, a few probes are going down as well. Cannon will also get knocked away out here. Well, army supply massively favors Clem. ShoWTimE's still going to be very reliant on these disruptors to see some amount of success in the tail end of this game. The problem is, obviously, Liberators are extremely good defensively. They're going to stop it from being an easy push forward at any stage. It's just not looking pretty, guys, for ShoWTimE. I mean, the base trade is going to give him a bit more of an opportunity. These Liberators are just going to straight up come into this position. We are attacking from the bottom left as well. Clem has decided it's time to deal with this army. He's done with running around it. And he is going to just go for the full surround, and he is just going to kind of just deal with everything. GG's. 17.5 minutes is what it takes, but Clem does come out of this with a 2-0 victory. Again, I would say in general, Clem looked pretty good throughout these games. I think he was